That was a rough one. Good evening, everybody. Welcome into the From the Firefly podcast. My name is Callume Alston, and I will be your host as always. Ay. That was wow. I was up just a horrible performance. As Charlton lose 3-1 to Portsmouth. I probably have a slightly strange take on that game last night because I don't think a lot of the failures were necessarily tactical. There's a couple of things I want to talk about. Don't worry, I will discuss the appalling officiating performance. I will discuss some of the controversial sort of decisions that happened, but so it doesn't sound like sour grapes, if because there will be one or two. There always are. There's any Pompey fans in here or you're listening later or whatever it is. They deserved that on last night, and the performance on our end was diabolically awful. We were second best to every ball. Our midfield got completely played around. We had some disciplinary issues. The shape looked wrong. Again, I'll come back to that. I don't think that was necessarily tactical. Players who normally give you 115% every game just didn't look particularly interested at times. And all of it could have been so different if Harry Clark takes that chance 30 seconds in. But as has become the story of our season, right? The chances aren't falling to the strikers who put them away. The chances are falling to defenders who are missing. For all the negativity, we're actually taking 7 points from the last 12. That's mid-table form. 32 games in, we remain same number of points as Sheffield United and Norwich, which I think any of us would have taken start of the season. Still 7 points away from the drop zone, and we just have to hope that was a blip last night, and that we'll show up on Saturday at Southampton, and if we show up like we did last night, 5-1. 5-1 repeat would be would be kind on us. In a way, it's hard to formulate how I feel. I haven't felt that way really since that 5-1 leaving the Valley. This season, I felt really down about it. It felt like a real opportunity to push towards mid-table. Felt like an opportunity to, even if you got a point, right, to sort of get yourself out of that Blackburn, Pompey, Leicester, West Bromwich Albion sort of group. As it stands, we're above that group. We remain above that group. I mean, Portsmouth have to beat Ipswich, and even if they win that game in hand, they're still going to be behind us. So it's not quite the disaster in terms of the maths and in terms of relegation. There are things that I've read today that have really bothered me, and I should know better to not go on to Charlton-related content after a loss, because we're incredibly reactionary as a fan base at times. But it doesn't really change the math. What it does is it takes what was probably the most winnable game outside of Sheffield Wednesday on that schedule, and probably we've now lost that. We've lost to Norwich. We've lost to Portsmouth twice. We've lost to Leicester once. The game against West Brom's away. Now, Eric Ramsey hasn't won a game yet. If we can continue that, that'd be great. But it's a tough game, you know. Outscored now 10-3 in 3 games against a team from the South Coast. We play another one on Saturday. And obviously, when a team beats you 5-1, you go into that next one on the back of a loss, and you don't feel as if you're going to get anything from the game. And my worry is if I feel that as a fan, how do players feel? But that was nowhere near good enough, right? We lost to Portsmouth twice, and their best player didn't play any of the game. They had 14 injuries last night, and I'm sure we'll discuss it later on the Chronicles, and I'd be more interested to kind of get you guys' perspective when I sort of check the comments in a few minutes, which is I thought we had an arrogance about us that I didn't particularly like. I think when Nathan Jones talks about getting dominated between the boxes, I think he's right. I think we showed up and we looked like we couldn't almost be bothered at times to put a foot in there. And we'll come to the referee in a moment because it's a really important part of it. But excluding him, there were players who, as I say, normally give you 110% who just were at 60. Right? I thought Harry Clark was dreadful at times yesterday. Right? Forget the missed chance. I thought defensively, Ali Adam on toast at times. I think that, you know, Luke Chambers struggled quite a lot in that game. I thought Sonny Carey was really poor in the middle. I thought Craig Doherty looked completely overwhelmed. I thought Adams just absolutely bossed the middle of the park. Cody, when Doherty doesn't have the legs, doesn't have the running ability to make up for it. Second goal, just space all over. Mari Bell, absolutely dreadful. Thomas Kaminski, woeful on the first goal. I'm going to play the third goal because actually I think it takes a really nasty swerve and goes off of the inside of the post. But the height of it, you think you should be moving more quickly. Lloyd Jones going on the runabouts again. Sonny Carey not playing the ball, simple ball through. Right, really, if you take Dykes out of the consideration, right, who I thought actually was creditable. And to be fair, I don't think that's Miles Leeburn's fault that he was ineffective yesterday. I mean, there were times they were going for the same ball. I mean, Carey should play him in. But that didn't work, right? I thought TC was okay coming off the bench, right? I thought if Evra gave you something, and I think there's something there. I think the Thierry Small comparisons are actually pretty apt. I think he looked like that, right? Maybe not the same level, but the same sort of driving fullback. And when you're trailing in a game, I think he does give you that impetus to go forward. I thought Connor Coventry was okay when he came on second half, but again, Portsmouth sort of took their feet off the gas pedal. It's really hard for me to sit here and tactically analyze that game. There's not a huge amount that I think tactically we necessarily got wrong. We set up in the same way that we sort of set up in the last couple of games. I would have brought Leeburn in, especially playing against Swanson and Reagan Paul, both of them are smaller centre backs, and you try and put the ball across the box, and it worked in the first 30 seconds, right? Because Dykes wins a flick on, I think it's against Paul, and all of a sudden Clark's in. Right, puts that away. It's 1-0. It's a different game, right? But he's a right wing back, not a forward. But we had no one running off of any one flick on. So no running off of anyone in that first half. It was stodgy. It was slow. The entire attacking game plan seemed to be fire the ball at Lyndon Dykes' head with nobody to run off it. Second half, that changed and we caused them some trouble, but at the expense of defensive solidity. There's an argument maybe they should have had a couple of penalties. But it's a disheartening one, that, right? And as I say, I really hope I can sit here in 3 weeks' time and say, okay, it was a bad night, and we all sort of move on. But it makes West Brom now absolutely huge. It makes Oxford and Sheffield Wednesday absolutely must-win games of football. And look, if you can pull that off, you pull off one more result at home and you're home and dry. Right? It is that simple, right? We just need to find basically 4 victories somewhere. Right? And whether that comes in 3 victories and 3 draws or 4 wins, no draw, whatever, who cares? Right? We can lose 8, 9 games and still stay up. Right? The likelihood of West Brom, Leicester, Blackburn, Portsmouth all winning in the same weekend, I think, is relatively low. But I'd rather not stay up by default. I'd rather stay up without all of this stress. So look, we were second best. But I do have to do it. And I hate doing this. Anyone listening to this podcast knows I hate doing this. Anyone knows me personally knows I hate doing this because you can't change the referees. But that first 45 minutes of refereeing is 45 of the worst minutes of officiating I've ever seen. And I chatted to some Pompey fans on the way home. This was in Canning Town, I think. I went to him and I went, look, you guys fully deserved it. I don't want to come across as sour grapes. You know, he's like, no, you don't come across as sour grapes. He said he was absolutely god awful. For an away team, he was perfect, right? An away team that went ahead early, right? Because basically he just kept stopping the game. But the number of fouls that were given, they didn't look like fouls. The number of times the same tackle would happen to both sides, only one side would get a decision. A penalty that's not a penalty, right? You can watch it back. I mean, I can't understand the Portsmouth fans in the comments saying, "Oh, it's not a penalty." Co-coms, as he said, right? Co-coms on Sky. You can't give that, right? What the linesman's doing, I do not know, but that killed the game, right? But not only that, but he's booked both my fullbacks, right? He's booked a midfielder, he's booked a goalkeeper, he's booked a forward, right? All of a sudden, you can't press. So trying to get back into that game with that many yellow cards is impossible because you can't press, because you can't tackle. We couldn't stop counters because we were worried if we tried to put our foot in, this guy's lost complete control. He lost control of the game. He made it all about him, right, for 45 minutes. It calmed down in the second half. But for 45 minutes, made it all about him, right? And it made what was a bad night in terms of performance from us worse, right? He's not the whole reason we lost. We lost because we weren't good enough, right? To be really, really clear. But if he is not refereeing a League One game this weekend, I would be shocked. If we give him on that performance card anything other than an F, I would be, I don't even know if they do it by numbers or letters anymore. I would be stunned, right? Because anyone that reviews that performance from referee objectively will see that that's somebody that needs to spend some time in the lower divisions, maybe honing his craft, right? I thought he was poor when we had him at Wrexham away as well, right? But nothing like he was last night. That was absolutely atrocious. And it makes, there are times you're going to win points playing badly. And I'm not saying that we would have won the game if Portsmouth had been at 1-0 at halftime, whatever it was, right? We were second best all over the pitch all night, except for maybe a 10-minute spell after the goal went in. Fair play to Fevre, it's a lovely finish. But if you're going to win points playing badly, everything else has to kind of go right. And yesterday, the man in the middle was wrong, right? And I get it, right? I get Louis and Richard always going to be a little bit more sort of calm about this sort of stuff. I thought they were completely wrong, saying that a lot of the decisions were right. They weren't right. Right? You kill a game, right? You don't just have to give someone a red card to kill a game. He killed that game yesterday. And so even having the opportunity to respond in the second half was gone. But just the final point before I take some comments. Our inability to get in at halftime 1-0 down is really, really concerning me now. Right? We just cannot get back into games at 1-1. It always seems to be 2-0 at the moment. Heads drop. Heads need to stay up. I thought Amari Bell, after the penalty was awarded, and he should have done better closing Devlin down on the first goal, but Kaminsky should save it. Right? I thought Bell completely lost his head. Didn't look right. And the problem is that we know what happens when that left side doesn't have a competent player in there, is that the whole structure falls apart. It did. You should get out to the third goal as well. But I'm frustrated, but that's why you need a cushion, right? That's why you build the cushion. That's why you look at it and you go, there will be teams that we play who we can beat. I don't think we're going to go 1 win in 14. But it just puts the pressure now on the West Brom game. It puts a big pressure on Sheffield Wednesday and Oxford away. And Oxford, we have a dreadful record at Hillsborough, to be fair. Hillsborough's sort of an exemption because of the mess that they're in. But I'm just disappointed. I'm disappointed more than anything else. I'm not angry. I think anyone getting angry and people say, oh, I'm going to stop watching football because I'm getting it served up. So just stop it. Stop it. Right, the guy that was arguing with Nathan at the end of the game, Nathan, don't rise to it. If that fan was, stop it. Like, we all have a right to an opinion. I get that. But when people, it wasn't actually a necessarily toxic crowd last night, I didn't think. Right? It wasn't Sheffield United sort of crowd, and it was a much worse performance than that was. Right? I thought the crowd was absolutely fine. Right? So why make it about you? Whether it's Nathan making it about him at the end, or whether it's that fan making it about them at the end. Right? What is the point of just giving people pelters as they walk off? Does it make you? Who does it help? I don't know. Maybe somebody can answer that for me. But as I say, we all have the right to an opinion. I get that. We all have the right to say what we want. But sometimes you can't say whatever you want without there being a reaction from somebody. And I think that going around Twitter now, that we have to all get on, we all have to defend the right of the fan or whatever. It's like, sometimes people say stuff. I don't know what was said, right? But we need to stop doing that, right? Because we need to really stick together, as cheesy as it sounds. It's going to be difficult. People thinking we were just going to stroll through the next 10 games or whatever and pick up the points, we're all going to be, we were never going to do that. And it goes back to that same thing I banged on this podcast for 5 months. Expectation management. Manage your expectations or you're only ever going to be disappointed. Right? And we'll see what happens in the summer. If we stay up, we'll see what happens over the next couple of months. But, the victory laps, see, I was right. This was going to happen. This person's not good enough. This person's out their depth. I saw someone saying something like, do they do anything on the training ground? Do they change the tactics? Of course they do. Right? It just so happens that when something's not broken, you don't need to fix it. We don't need to play radically different football every week. I get it. It's not the most fun thing to watch at the moment. It's frustrating for me. And I don't know, in the future, whether Nathan Jones is the manager to take us forward, right? I don't know. Can he change that football? I think he can. I think, he did at Luton towards the end. But we need to solve in the summer. We need to solve the midfield. We need to get 2 competent fullbacks in. Right? Because it just doesn't work without having that available in the system. Right? I think the forward maybe looked better, to be fair, yesterday, but wasn't great. And I don't think Chambers suited left back at all. Right, let's have a read of some of the people live. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me. Evening to Robert. I hope you enjoyed your trip away. I did. It was lovely. I drank a lot of Northern Italian wine. Although I got a bit of a sinus infection, so coming back on the plane was not particularly fun. Lots of this about last night's game, but in the end, Pompey seemed much right up for it. They did. They deserved to win that game. Joseph, morning, they pinned our fullbacks with the wingers, meaning no service to big men from out wide, and they won the midfield battle, no plan B. Yeah. I think you're right. I think tactically that's exactly what happened, was they realised that the only way we were going to score was by going down that outside point, which is what you do in a 5. But they did another thing as well, Joseph, and let me know if you agree. And they pinned Cody, so they made it so that it had to be Doc or Carey to play the ball through, and that's neither of their games. As I say, that's why I pointed to Carey quite specifically. And there, I don't expect Doc to do that, but I know Carey can do it. And he didn't last night. Mark, evening using the three games before as a bit of context last night, which was not there. That's what I'm hoping. I think that we just need to react, right? We just need to react. Too many blips for my liking. Southampton, Millwall, Pompey. Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong necessarily, Stuart. I think that's just part of being the team that's come up. Pompey went to Bristol City and got thumped 5-0. West Brom got thumped 5-0 at home, right? Like, just where we are. Leicester lost to Oxford Nuzz in back-to-back weeks at home. Just where we are there's going to be blips, right? And also, when you point at Southampton and Millwall, those are infinitely more expensive and infinitely better squads as well. I think that does need to sort of be taken into account. The reaction yesterday, even today, doesn't match the issue for me. Reacted those 3 games back to back like that. Exactly that. I think the ones that we saw in December were actually rational, right? I think some of the strong reactions, I had that strong reaction. I think after Derby, I had a strong reaction, right? Because it had been quite consistent. I think that if we can get back to what we were doing for the 3 games before that, yeah, I think some of the reactions were over the top. 1 second. Pardon me. I'm starting to lose my confidence in him. He was dreadful in that first goal. Um, honestly, absolutely dreadful. You have to save that, and it's actually, and yeah, to be a modicum of whatever was the that first guy starts outside and comes back in. It's a nasty swerver, but you have to save it when it ends up there. I think he starts to dive one way and it moves the other, but that can't be going through your legs there. The third one, I'm less. The one I'm less annoyed by. I just don't think changing goalkeeper changes much at the moment. I don't think it's this panacea that a lot of people think. I think the sort of Man U obsession, not from used to it, but the Man U obsession is a little bit mad amongst the fan base. It's all going to fix everything. Again, goes back to my thing about expectation management. If Kerry doesn't score, he looks dreadful. The most stat pattern in the league thanks to 7 goals. Well, that's a strong opinion. That is a strong opinion. I don't I don't necessarily disagree in a way. I think that there's a time and place for the way he plays football, but there's too many occasions in the last 6 weeks where he just hasn't played a ball you need to play. The one where he decides to run around here with your left foot, you just play Lee in. You just play Lee in, right? And probably Lee scores from there, right? So it's hard because the strikers are going to get blamed for not scoring the goals, but we're not creating for them because we're not playing the ball. And that to me is less managing or playing style or tactical decisions and just players not doing the right thing. The right thing there is to play your friend in, right? To put that in the corner. He didn't play it. It's not the first time it's happened. Right, Coventry's the other one was at Nibs that was going through. He has to play that ball. You have to play it. Edward Adams' recent clubs include Forest Green, Nebsley. I know it's an incredible career. Didn't he have good injury problems? Didn't he? I think that's part of it. He was absolutely loved at Derby. Absolutely loved. Hi Sam. No way about being late. It's an early one. Main pros we never dominate games. The plan is to defend, and then hope we can snatch a goal. And we let the first goal, then we panic and we very rarely cover it. And it is exactly this, right? One of the reasons why we get the thing about mistakes, and I've talked about this before, is every mistake is amplified, right? And I get it at the moment, we don't have the players to dominate games on the ball, right? We're just not set up to do that. But the changes in the summer, they have to be focused on getting players who can get on the ball. You know, you can stick to this system and get players that can do that. I use a really good example. Jordan Clark's a really good example of a player that played underneath and it worked, but he's actually more technical on the ball. But we needed that sort of player. That's why I said in January, that was a player that at 32, does he want to stay at the Luton team that's back, they're sort of back for the playoffs again a little bit now, but, they weren't at the time. They were looking at they were descending towards mid-table. They still got awful away for them. That was the sort of player I looked at and I went, would they be, open to kind of, to some sort of agreement? Because that's the sort of player that, can fit into that team and actually can help you sort of dominate the ball. Robert, I don't know about Godden. It's unfortunate. I don't know if you can do too serious. It's a hamstring injury. Those are normally a month minimum, even if it's just a strain. So, yeah, you can't rely on a 34-year-old striker. We say as we're about to sign sounds like a 35-year-old. Yeah, I look like a good player for them, but never be a Nathan Jones type player. Yeah, he's a winger. He's an out-and-out winger. We don't play with out-and-out wingers. So, but he was good. He was good at Exeter. I liked him at Exeter. I thought he was a good player. So, but he was, but yeah, an out-and-out winger is just not going to solve it. I think really, if you look at yesterday sort of an exemption. If you look at where we're struggling, I think it's having an 8 that can get on the ball. We don't have that. Because if you play Rankin Costello and you play Kerry, they're too similar. I don't know what's happened to Rankin Costello. It's like he doesn't exist again. Very strange. But yeah, I that look at the doc from January or from December before he was dropped. He looked completely out of sorts yesterday. And the big problem you have with him is he can't bring the ball down. It constantly ends up being a game of head tennis, which is frustrating. Let's just have a couple of quick minutes on Southampton. I don't expect anything from that game, if I'm honest with you. And they've won 4 of their last 5. James Bree looks like he's a player completely reborn, because it turns out it's not actually, players that have played in the Premier League aren't actually bad footballers. Unlike some in the fan base like to think. He's fit, he's firing. Sounds like they're going to try and give him a contract extension. We'll see. I think that what's his name? Siren, the striker, the Canadian, big, strong, tough forward. It's going to be a handful for Lloyd Jones. They've got Ross Stewart, if he's fit, coming off the bench, a player that is basically the Championship's version of an EK. Really, really effective, but just injured all the time and can only play for 20-25 minutes a game. Still got Skienza as one of the best players in the division. They've got 2 very good centre backs. They've got Imperits now. They've got a much better goalkeeper. It's going to be tough. Right, it's going to be negativity because it's going to be Nathan Jones on the sideline for us, and we know that they're going to make that difficult for us, and also there's going to be some mental scars from the 5-1, and it's just going to be, we're going to have to play very, very, very compact, and we're just going to have to sort of sit in there and hope to get something. Yes, Genza's probably the best player I've seen this year. I mean, he ripped Rob Apter absolutely to shreds. He's just he's an unbelievable footballer. But that's the market that you hope to be able to shop in. It's the Bundesliga too, right? Starting in the summer, when we were sort of an established Championship side, you can start looking at that, because no one wants to make a move, who's an established player, to a team that they can't promise is going to stay in the division. So I hope you can start shopping in that market. Sod's Law, Bree will score. Apologies about the cough, everybody. As I said, I got a slight viral infection when I was in Italy. Right. With that, as you can hear, my voice is a little bit ropey, so I'm gonna end it there before you all just end up under me cough for another half an hour. Thanks for joining. I know it's early, so I really, really appreciate it. Hopefully, I've sort of expressed some of my frustration, but in a way that's at least somewhat brings something to the conversation. But if you're going down to Southampton, remember the train, there's better replacement buses from Eastleigh. It's about 20 minutes from Southampton. It's not very far. And I'll see some of you down at St. Mary's. I'm hosting the Chronicles, by the way, later. So come along and we'll have a hopefully a pretty calm and detailed discussion with Paul and Stephen. I think hopefully Sid and Tyler. But we'll see who's on this evening. Right, everybody. We've got this one just to forget. And I'll see you all on Sunday for a review of, hopefully what won't be a battering at St. Mary's. All right, bye for now.